I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, June the 5th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a bold, straight shooting telithromycin injection that does what it's supposed to do for you, for your cattle, and for your bottom line. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards, they're getting an early start, and I do mean early. About 4:30 in the morning, they'll be selling cattle. They'll be on bunches before 7. They've got 13,000 head, lots of yearlings, lots of big droves of yearlings, guys. Get on to dvauction.com to view that sale. Get hold of them in the office there at Joplin if you want to be approved to bid. But the cattle are just coming out of the woodwork with the market that we saw here last week. And then, of course, your big Monday sales were closed last Monday due to Memorial Day. So they're getting all the cattle. And I think that this market is pulling some of those cattle off those cool season grasses there in southern Missouri a little bit early. Normally they will kind of arrange to market those cattle before it gets really hot and that grass plays out, and they'll go in and clip that grass and then put cattle back out there, you know, as the early fall starts there, because you'll get a little more growth again. But cattle are coming out of the woodwork. Oklahoma National Stockyards expecting at least 10,000 head of cattle. Record week, and I'm talking about last week, but I think we'll probably see some records this week, probably on feeders and calves. But last week, just unbelievably high market. We set a new benchmark for the top price in the Northern Plains at 190. That beat the other record. In the Southern Plains, we had the highest we've ever seen at 180. We'll have a record on your 5 area weighted average price this week, probably beat it by a little more than $1, maybe $1.50. But June live cattle futures is what really set it off there, especially on Thursday, as the calendar turned and we were in June, because the whole time we were in May, they just kept playing around with that futures board because we don't have a May contract. And like I said, we're in a bastard month. When we were in May, they didn't really have to get your June live cattle anywhere near where we were trading them, and then we were running with a $12 to $15 basis, which your hedge cattle feeders loved it. But we were losing market position like crazy. Well, once we turned the calendar over to June, your speculating and your funds that were in the board on the long side, they looked in there and they thought, oh my gosh, maybe we ought to get to doing something here. So they started piling in there because they saw that the June live cattle futures were undervalued. So everybody piled on the long side, and congratulations to those guys that indeed speculated on the June live cattle here in the last couple of 3 months, because they sure got healed up on Thursday. But we didn't really fix your basis at all, because your fat cattle market in the Southern Plains, which is what runs tight with your live cattle futures, it gained $9, and your June live cattle futures gained $9. So it's kind of a wash there. So we're still undervalued a little bit. I think that the current board wants to catch up a little bit more. Wouldn't be surprised to see it trading a little bit higher again. And we're still really short of market ready cattle. Wouldn't be surprised to gain a little more ground in your fat cattle cash market, because the highest prices that were paid last week was at the very tail end of the week. August feeder cattle were up $8 last week. They're up there almost $242, and that's coming right around the corner. That's an all-important contract month there, because so many of those cattle that are coming off grass late in the summer will be priced near that. So we saw that. And then cash feeders, they were higher all week, but late in the week, like on Friday, especially at Fort Pierre Livestock Auction at their special that they had, and then some other places that sold over the weekend and on Friday, we indeed saw some highs there, records. I know, you know, it's hard to call a record on a cash feeder or calf market, because you know, there's a lot of different variables in there, but we saw some really high prices, and higher than I remember 8 or 9 years ago when we were getting the big prices for some of them and some of the weights there, but very impressive. Our cows are getting high, our weigh up cows, slaughter cows in the sale barns. Your cow packers are getting braced for 4th of July hamburger grilling, and there will continue here for the next 2 or 3 weeks to see your slaughter cows gaining ground and getting higher just about every week. So that'll be interesting to see, but just high prices for all classes of cattle. But last week was also helped out because it was a short week. If you remember, Monday everybody was enjoying Memorial Day still, and then by the time we got into Tuesday, that was like a Monday. Then all of a sudden we're in Wednesday, half the week's gone, your packers hadn't done anything, they got aggressive, they got desperate, they tipped their hand, they showed how hungry they were, and then it just went gangbusters. And I'm proud of your cash sellers on Thursday, because they just kept asking more and more and more and more, and you just don't see your cash prices in your feedlots $7 to $9 higher than the previous week, and it's very impressive, and it just gives you a little bit of faith that we've still got some fundamentals out there. We've still got a little bit of cash trade. Of course, the bulk of your trade and your big corporates are just waiting on the fence and waiting for the formulas to go up and the base off of those. So they weren't there to help, but they're sure going to enjoy it. But we had good shelf clearance over Memorial Day week there, and the packers are hungry for cattle or for beef again, and they've got to get to harvesting them. But we did see a disappointing harvest or slaughter last week, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. But let's talk about your board for last week. June live cattle futures, of course, Monday was closed for Memorial Day. Tuesday was up $1.52. Wednesday was up a quarter. Thursday up $5.77. And Friday up another $1.52, with June live cattle ending the week at $176.42, up $9.07. The heck of it was. Your latest established trade in the Southern Plains was $1.80, so they're still trading more than $3.50 behind. Your August live cattle was up $7.73 for the week, closing at $172.90. It'll be the next one to dogpile on, guys, because we're not going to catch any resistance, I don't think, as far as having heavier supplies through that too. But feeder cattle market, August feeder cattle contracts, Monday was closed. Tuesday up $3.85 to start the week. Wednesday was up $1.40. Thursday up $2.47. Friday up 25 cents. Your August feeder cattle ended the week at $241.90, up $7.98, which was huge, especially since your grains ended up higher for the week also. September feeder cattle ended the week at $2.45 smooth, which was up $7.90. December corn, new crop corn, $5.41 1/4 at the end of the week, up 6 3/4 cents for the week. Soybeans, new crop for November, up 11, or it was closed at 11.83 3/4, actually down 5.75. And July Kansas City wheat, 8.12 1/4 at the end of the week, down 7 cents a bushel. Talk about your fat cattle trade. Up through Thursday of last week, we'd sold 66,000 in your 5-area feeding region. Pretty decent movement for as tight as our available supplies are. Live sales in the 5-area on fat steers and heifers range from $173.50 to $190. $16.50 spread just in your 5-area, guys. We could do that better than that on a 100-pound spread of feeder cattle in most sales, but big wide spreads. But that was $3.50 to $7 higher than a week ago. Your weighted average on 5-area steers, 181.35 up through Thursday. That was up 364 for the week. Dress sales ranged in price from $285 to $294, which was $5 higher. And your average dress steer in your 5-area was $289.66, and the weighted average up $5.30. Friday we had a little more trade. Iowa sold 1,300 head confirmed, 19,000 for the week. They just about scraped Iowa clean, guys. Live sales in Iowa, 187 to 190. Dress sale, that was $7 higher. Dress sales $289 to $292, be $5.5 to $9 higher there. Nebraska 2,700 head on Friday, 23,100. They'd been buying more in Iowa than Nebraska for the last several weeks, but they finally went over and started cleaning Nebraska out. Live sales 182 to 189. Dress sales 292 to 297. Kansas sold 600 on Friday, 16,700 for the week, which is pretty brisk for Kansas. 180 was the main price there, up $9. Texas 300 head, 12,000 for the week, and $1.80 there late in the week. Box beef cutout values were higher and a lot higher by the end of the week. Your weighted average on choice cuts for the whole week of last week was up $5.43 compared to the previous week's weighted average at $306.79. By the end of the week on Friday afternoon, it was $3 higher than that weighted average at almost $3.10. Your weighted average on select cuts was up $4.45 compared to the previous week's weighted average at $288.04. By the end of the week, it had gained nearly $3, close to $291. So big gains in your dressed beef too, and it'd be nice to be packers just to charge more for your product when your inputs are costing more. But choice select spread there on the weighted average for last week was $18.75, and all this happened on 519 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter turned out to be pretty disappointing. Some of that had to do undoubtedly with the floodwaters in the southern plains, the Texas Panhandle. I mean, we call Amarillo the Everglades now. I've never seen it rain this much in such short amounts of time. I mean, 2-3 inches a day is not uncommon in the Texas Panhandle, and it has got major roads covered with water. It's hampering travel. It's really causing some problems there. But your slaughter for last week ended up 573,000. I can't really compare it with the previous week because it wasn't a holiday, but compared to a year ago's holiday, that was 35,000 less. These packers are going to have to get with it on this slaughter now. Everybody thinks a light slaughter is bearish for the cattle market. It wasn't bearish when they did it in April, and if they don't get, because they got so desperate for beef, they really had to come unglued here this last week, and I think maybe they'll try to temper that a little bit more going forward. Talk about what else is going on. EverAg can help you with your risk management. Beef producers must continually plan to protect their operations' profitability. Navigate risk management with EverAg. Go to ever.ag on your computer, guys, and look it up, and they can help you with all kinds of different types of risk management there. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Real-time index on DV auction ended the week based on an 800-pound cash auction steer at $214.93. That was up $378 compared to the previous week. A lot of your sales were higher than that in their trend, but CME cash feeder cattle index falling way behind. It ended last week at 208 and just barely a few pennies there. It's got a lot of work to do, but once you get Fort Pierre plugged in there, it's going to go up big to start this week. But all of your feeder cattle auctions that had much of an offering were sharply higher. Pretty much everywhere you go, calves and feeder cattle. But look last week on Saturday at Fort Scott Livestock Market in Fort Scott, Kansas. DV auction broadcaster there. Look at these strings of yearling steers that I pulled out of there out of Fort Scott. They're all impressive, especially including the highest one I see here. 115 steers weighed 928 at $216. That's in Fort Scott, Kansas, guys. I'm going to give you several individual quotes. Santa Teresa livestock auction down on the border. It's cattle that have been they've already been crossed. They're selling there. They're ready to go into interior United States. They've had all the processing done and everything. That on Saturday they sold, or maybe it's Friday. I can't remember when they have their sale. Either Friday or Saturday. Santa Teresa livestock auction. Check it out on dvauction.com. You can view and bid right there. Arrange the trucking, and you can have those cattle. 79 head. 484 pound steers bring 252. Pretty impressive for freshly crossed cattle, but you guys might be interested at that. How about Turlock Livestock Auction Yard, way out west in Turlock, California? 62 steers weighed 665 at 279 and a quarter. Wow. How about Wahoo Livestock Sales in Wahoo, Nebraska? Love to say that word. How about 60 steers weighed 874 at 229? Very impressive there. Let's go back east. I want to give you guys a full gamut. How about Bluegrass Stockyards in Richmond there? They do a good job. 55 steers weighed 982 in the ring in Richmond, Kentucky. 199.50. Wow. Dunlap Livestock Auction. Talked to John Shaven there, and he had a really impressive string, long string of commodity backgrounded heifers for feed. There was 501 head of them, weighed 761 at 237. Very impressive. But Fort Pierre Livestock Auction had their World Championship Livestock Auctioneer anniversary sale there. It's always a big deal. Had nearly 10,000 head on offer, sharply higher. And a good market reporting there said the condition of the cattle was very attractive. Most of the cattle in lighter flesh. The calves had all been long time weaned, had double rounds of shots. Everything was right. And some of the most reputation consignments that they get all year. But very impressive sale at Fort Pierre Livestock Auction. Look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central, and you look at the best tested weights, which was in your mid to heavier weight calves. 1,049 head of 5-weight steer calves, average 554, with a weighted average price on 1,050 of them at 301.86. That kind of gives you an idea what kind of sale they had at Fort Pierre, South Dakota. 935 head of 6-weight steer calves, average 649, with a weighted average price on all of them of 285.88. Look at the heifers. 914 head of 5-weight heifer calves, average 545, with a weighted average price of 278.82. Of course, Fort Pierre had our most impressive quote for late last week or over the weekend. It was your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day. Get a load of this. NHTC steers, non-hormone, just don't implant them. 67 steer calves weighed 655 at 302. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.